Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's Underscore webinar on marketing your education program. Underscore is a monthly series that we host here at Intellum to help you learn things around marketing, whether it's marketing your education program or measuring metrics around your education program, proving the value of your education program. So this is a monthly series that we host to help you to grow in your career and to help you just grow your education program in general. So before we dive into today's topic, just some quick housekeeping. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded. So if you need to jump off at any point, if you want to share it with a colleague or a friend, if you want to come back and take some notes, you'll find the recording right here on the page that you're on right now. You'll also receive an email after the webinar ends, so be on the lookout for the recording in your email. Throughout this webinar, you'll have access to the Q&A box. So underneath this video, if you scroll down, you're going to see a few things down there. One of those things is going to be a Q&A box. Consider that our chat box for the next hour. If you have questions, if you just want to say hello and where you're calling in from, if you just want to kind of engage, I love that while we're here. So you can use that Q&A box. And then also underneath this video, I want to call attention to, there's a rating section. So at the end of this webinar, I'm going to ask you to rate this session. That helps us to understand, do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you want to hear about in the future? So we read all of those comments. And then the last thing that I'll share too is I'm going to show you some really practical examples today, which is going to depend on you being able to see what's on your screen. If there's a chance that your video quality is a little grainy, it's likely because this platform is kind of auto sizing to your internet speed and computer and all of that. In the bottom right-hand corner of your screen is a little gear icon. If you click on that, you can kind of manually override and adjust those settings to get a clearer picture on your screen. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit. Hi, my name is Shannon Howard. I'm the Director of Customer and Content Marketing at Intellum. I'm usually the host of this webinar, but I'll also be your speaker for today's webinar. I live in the mountains of Western North Carolina. You may have heard of it. It was on the news a lot at the tail end of last year, but I live here with my husband, Josh. You'll see him in the photo there. My dog, Eleanor, she's just turned 4, and my cat, Jumbo, he'll be 11 in a few weeks here. Love the great outdoors, love to be outside. It's been so nice outside lately, so that's really exciting. And then outside of my work at Intellum, I work with college students. So if you hear me referring to students, college, that's kind of my jam outside of work. But enough about me. I want to dig into what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about practical ways to promote your education program, whether that's driving new learners, driving returning learners. We're going to look at how to kind of analyze your metrics to understand where the opportunity is. Do we want to drive more people? Do we want to drive people back to learning? And then, of course, I want to show you some real life examples of what this looks like in practice, because we just did some research around kind of the state of education-led growth. And one part of that is around marketing. How are you marketing and promoting your education programs? And what we heard is that most people don't have a dedicated marketer on their team, and most of us don't even have dedicated access to our marketing team to market our programs, which means we're kind of learning how to do this as we go. And so I want you to leave this webinar prepared, equipped with ways that you can market your program and drive returning learners. And what does that look like, and what are other people doing? What we're not going to do, we're not going to dive into marketing kind of as a whole. It's a whole discipline, just like education is a discipline, but I want you to kind of walk away with a few things that you can do. So we're going to start with driving learners. I'm going to go over here. Oh, hi, Mary. Thanks for being here. We're going to start with driving new learners to your program. All right, so when we create content, it's not just that we're creating content, right? We want people to get eyeballs on it. If we can't drive behavior change, we can't drive business outcomes if people aren't seeing our content. So we want to think about how are we getting people to our content for the first time? How do they become aware that we have an education program, an academy, whatever it is that your business calls it? How do we make sure that people are aware of that? And especially when we're talking about adult learners, because we're basically all working with adult learners, they have choices of where to be and when to be there. So the first thing I want to talk about is starting with a value prop. So value prop is short for value proposition, but this is why would someone come to your education program, right? We have choices of what to do with our day and our time. We're working with busy adults. They have choices of what to learn and where to learn it. So why would they come to you in your program? Is it that they have to learn for their job? Are you the top-notch resource on the field that they work in or the kind of work that they do? So we want to be clear about the value that it is that we're going to provide through our education program, because what we're first trying to do before we sell them on taking the content, we're first trying to sell them on why would you learn from us in the first place. So this is an example from a previous job where I worked on an education team, created our online academy. And the whole idea here was like helping people learn to make work better through hiring the right people, managing them to perform, designing intentional teams, and designing a talent strategy that aligns to your organizational strategy. So that was really kind of their whole thing. We wanted people to know when you come here, this is what you can expect. This is why you would want to come here. And this is why it's important for you to create an account so you can get unlimited access to all of our content and courses. So something like that, you can work with your marketing team on that. Honestly, ChatGPT could be a good friend for you and just kind of brainstorming. How could we get people? What's that value prop? If I had to say in a sentence, why would you come here? What would that be? So this, as I mentioned, that research around education-led growth. And so we did ask people, how are you currently promoting your education programs? So how are you making people aware? I'm not going to read through each of these here. I should also say that underneath this video, there are attachments, which includes this whole slide deck. So as we're going through the examples, if you are thinking about taking a screenshot, just go ahead and download that slide deck because then you'll have all of them in one place. Not surprisingly, our most popular way of marketing and promoting our programs is through email, right? How many of us have received an email promoting some kind of course, a certification, access to an academy? Often this is going to be in collaboration with your email marketing team, maybe your customer marketing team, lifecycle marketing if you have it, or product marketing team. So for each one of these things, I do want to let you know kind of who on marketing might be your partner in this, so that you know who to go to. So if you don't currently have a working relationship, I want to help you to see like, how do we work with these people? Who are these people? What are the things that matter to them so that we can kind of enlist their help? So with email marketing, there are different types of emails that we might send. So the first type is a welcome email. I would think of welcome emails in two ways. One is kind of welcome to this thing overall, right? So someone has signed up for your program. This is an example when you sign up for Atlassian University, they send you an automatic email that says like, hey, get ready to learn with Atlassian University. Here are the types of things that you can expect in here, and here are your next steps. So if you don't have that set up yet, I would totally set that up. Usually your LMS will allow you to send those as people sign up for your program. I would also consider something like this. Your lifecycle marketing team, email marketing, customer marketing, whoever is really owning onboarding communications for your customer, they're usually doing this too. So regardless of whether you're kind of a down market audience, enterprise audience, they're probably sending some kind of welcome email. And can you get some of your education content into that email, right? Because a key part of customer education is to help people to be successful with your product or your service. So can you connect with your email team and share your education content as a resource for them to help to onboard new customers? So welcome emails, that's one type of email we want to be using. The one that we're probably all most familiar with is just promotional emails. Usually promotional emails go out when we're promoting a new course, a new certification. So you see an example there on the side. But you can also do this to promote your academy overall. If you have just new content that goes out, you have a new video, you have an upcoming webinar, promotional emails are a great way to drive people to that. And we'll talk in a little bit about kind of those live webinars and events, but it gives people a reason why now versus kind of, oh, let me save that for later. I don't know if anybody else, maybe you can tell me in the chat. If you also have a to-read folder in your email, and if you also have 98 unread emails in there, just let me know. I'm not alone in that. But what I do think is really important on the promotional email front is that we want to keep the drumbeat going. So one of the things I talk about a lot when it comes to marketing is that consistency really matters. We want to be top of mind for people. It's not always about getting people to take action right now, because we all have things going on in our days. When they open your email, they're not necessarily in a mindset to kind of go jump into your academy and start learning. They may not have an hour or two. They may not have even 30 minutes to kind of jump in and start learning. But we want it to be top of mind. So when they do have 30 minutes, oh, let me go check out that course in at last university that I was looking at, or that I bookmarked and saved for later. So part of this recurring drumbeat of communications is just really reminding people over and over again. And one of the things we say a lot in marketing is when you get sick of saying the same thing, that is when someone finally just heard for the first time what it was that you were saying. So if you feel like you are over communicating, that's probably just the right amount of communication. The other thing I want to say about emails is they are one of the easiest ways to market, promote, communicate with people, but they're also not the only way. And that's why we want to look at kind of a well-rounded marketing program, because email open rates, just kind of depending on your audience, what types of emails you're sending, could be between like 20 to 40%. So that means math, 60 to 80% of people are not opening your emails, which means they're not even seeing any of this. So that's why it's important for us to kind of hit people from multiple different places. And we'll talk about other ways to do that. All right. So another one, if we kind of went back to that, how are people marketing and promoting their education programs? A big one is collaborating with other teams. The reason being, these people are getting in front of our customers on a regular basis, right? So who might this look like? Might look like sales, account management, customer success, implementation, your support team, marketing, right? All of these different teams are already communicating with your customers, maybe even getting FaceTime in person or virtually with your customer. And so these are incredible allies and assets in promoting your education content. So when we think about marketing, we don't just want to think about marketing externally to customers, to prospects, to partners, whoever it is, but we actually want to think about how do we get other people internally to champion our education programs. And so this might look like an internal newsletter. So that could be like I run an internal newsletter that's just kind of an email that says that this is a roundup of recent content, upcoming events. It could be a Slack channel. If you use Slack, it could be kind of a regular update of, hey, here's what's coming, here's what you can expect. And the big thing that I would encourage here is just to start. Often we're kind of waiting for permission for someone to say, yeah, it's totally okay to tell people about your education programs. And sometimes that permission could be a long time coming or never coming. And so just to kind of start doing that, most of us are not going to get a slap on the wrist if we just say, hey, here's some of the cool stuff that we've been doing, what we're working on, what we're really excited about. We can also encourage our partners in account management, customer success to incorporate our education into QBRs, into kickoff calls. Maybe if you have like a proper onboarding or implementation team, they're introducing that. I'm going to show you an example of that. In one-on-one conversations with colleagues. So if your company does virtual coffee chats or you use that coffee bot on Slack to connect with people around the organization, you can be talking about what your team is working on and the great things that you have going on and how other people can be sharing that and championing that around the company and with customers. And then you can also join team calls. So I find that's really helpful, especially for customer-facing teams. We all have a lot of communications that we have coming in, maybe a lot of Loom videos, depending on how your company works. And so we're just inundated with information. And sometimes the best way to get in front of someone is to actually get in front of them in real time. So joining a team meeting, a team huddle, whatever people call it, and talking about your education programs. And if you're wondering why I have not addressed the Kool-Aid man on the screen yet, I'm getting to that. So one of the things that I like to encourage people to do is to be the Kool-Aid man, right? And so the Kool-Aid man, what does he do? He knocks down walls and he just like busts on in there. And so if you are trying to market and promote your program, sometimes you have to do that. It's just bust down a wall, right? Like throw a meeting on someone's calendar or see if you can get on an invite. And so rather than waiting for someone to ask like, hey, what can I do to help you? Kind of proactively going out there and saying, hey, like it is critically important that our customers are aware of these things that we've got going on. And here's what that might look like. And can I get 10 minutes in your next team meeting to talk about that? Or, could I get 15 minutes of your time on your calendar? So just some thoughts there. This is an example. So I mentioned incorporating into your QBRs or into your kickoff calls. So when you're onboarding for Sendoso, this is an old slide, by the way, but I think it's a great example. And I actually took inspiration from this and then built this into a bunch of kickoff decks. when you're onboarding to Sendoso, they promote Sendoso University of like, hey, okay, here's your account, here's what you have access to, but also we have this great resource for you to learn how to use our product really well. It's called Sendoso University, and here's what you get. So adding something like this to your kickoff deck could be incredible, because now you're just letting customers know what it is that you have available and that there's this resource for them. So not only is it marketing your education programs, but really something I really encourage people to think about is when you're selling your product, what you're really selling is a whole product solution. People don't just buy software, technology, products, whatever it is that you sell, they buy the whole experience. So they're not just buying whatever it is, they're buying customer success, customer support, customer education. What's the quality of your help articles? Because if I get stuck, I need to get unstuck. And are there resources on demand or people to help me get unstuck? And so that's the concept of this like whole product solution selling. And so when we're introducing it as part of kickoff, or you can do something like this in a sales deck to say, hey, when you become a customer, you're going to have access to this. Or when you become a partner, you're going to have access to this, is a great way to sell our offering, kind of this whole product solution selling. Another example, so this is a slide that I did for our admin certification, just to let our teams know we have an admin certification. Let's go ahead, let's add this to QBR decks as you're talking to people. And so the idea here again is just to give people language and to give people resources that they can just slot into what they're doing already. So if you take the time to get to know your sales team, customer success, account management, marketing, how is it that you already work? And how can I help you? Can I create a slide for you? Can I create like a little blurb? Usually if I'm asking our sales team to send something, I'll write emails for them, right? So I just want to prepare, enable, equip our internal teams to just go and promote the crap out of what we're doing. And that's what I would encourage you to do as well. All right, we're going to move into another type of marketing here. And I would encourage you too, if you have questions as we're going, because I know marketing, it's a whole thing, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A box underneath the video, and we'll kind of take them as we go if you have questions as we're going. So in-app messaging, I think there's a whole kind of like part of customer education that's in-app messaging, right? So product walkthroughs, tutorials, tooltips, hotspots, all of that. We're going to put that over here. I wrote a blog on in-app training. But for in-app messaging here, we're just going to talk about how can you use an in-app tool like Chameleon, Pendo, UserPilot, Intercom, App Queues. How can you use something like that to market and promote your education programs? So if your company already has something like this, you can build a modal like this. So this is usually just called a modal. It's an overlay modal, and you can tell people about a new certification, a new course, an upcoming webinar. So I've used this modal format a number of times where you can, the great thing about a lot of these tools is that you can tell it exactly who you want to get this. So if there's a certain audience in your user population, if you want people who use certain parts of your product, if you want them to see it on certain pages in the platform or in the product, you can do that. You can also do kind of a delayed, right? So kind of annoying when you're logging into a product and the first thing that you get is a pop-up. So most of these will also allow you to kind of delay the timing on that too. But this can be a great way to meet people where they're at, right? So sometimes we're headed to their inbox. Sometimes they're having conversations with us, but then we might have people where their primary relationship with us is actually being in the product. So we're meeting them where they're at. So modals, that's one form. In-app navigation or helpful tips. So on the left of the screen here, you'll see an example. So if I was in Emburse and I clicked this question mark, I can navigate to the help center and I can navigate to user guides, right? So this is kind of built into this part of the product. And I did this at a previous company where we did the same thing. Like we had the question mark and then we kind of linked to our getting started videos, help articles, things like that from that question mark drop down. But that can be an easy way. The thing I like about in-app for things like this too is you can test out what works before you actually incorporate it into the product. So this is a great way to kind of give people a way to find what it is that they're looking for. So often when we're in the product, that's when we might get stuck, and we make it easy for them to find our education resources, whether those are product walkthroughs, guides, help articles, courses, videos. Can we just make it easy for them to find? On the right-hand side, and you might have to kind of zoom in a little here, is an example from Lucidchart where they show you in kind of like a side modal off of where you're building tips and templates and guides that they have that could help you as you're building in Lucidchart. So this is a way where they're kind of getting you when you're using the platform, when you might need some help, and they're just offering you, hey, if this is helpful to you, this is a resource that's available. The final type of in-app messaging that I think is helpful to direct people to our education content is actually building it into the platform. So if we use those in-app tools to kind of experiment and see where, when, what content would be helpful, then we can actually make a case to our engineering team to go ahead and build it into the product. So this is an example from HubSpot Academy, where they're actually, as people are onboarding in the platform, they're linking to, get started with a 4-minute lesson on attracting the right audience, take a short tour, and then they have just different next steps, but they're incorporating education content directly into the product because they know, hey, at this point in time, this content's actually going to be really valuable to someone, and let's go ahead and link to it from within the product. Okay. Our next type of marketing and promoting our program is launch collateral. So this is when you have product updates, new features, new functionality, just launches, right? So if we think about education coming alongside our product, it's not just training people on what exists today, but as new product functionality comes out, we're often training people on that functionality as well. So this is an example, and all I have for you is a screenshot, but if you download the deck, you can actually kind of link out to this. But this was from a previous role where I had the series called Litmus Learning, which was as we release new product updates, new functionality, I would host a webinar where I would talk about that new product functionality. What is it? Why is it important? Then how do you go ahead and use it? And then I would also kind of create content that would help people adopt new parts of the product. So you might think about this as new things are coming out of how do I help people learn about this? How do I adopt this? Because often products will kind of go to market, and sometimes we forget that people don't intuitively, naturally know exactly what it is that they're supposed to do or how something works. And so as much as we can help to come alongside and say, hey, as part of this launch process, let's consider enablement, let's consider training, let's consider maybe on-demand content or help articles that would support people in successfully adopting this new product, feature, functionality, whatever it is. We want to make sure that they have that. And then this can also go out. So things like this Litmus Learning series, we'd promote it in app, right? We would also promote it in the emails that went out about product releases. We'd promote it on our website. So we were kind of promoting it in multiple different places, but education was really going along with that product launch. Okay, this was one that Ken had messaged me about with social media. How are we getting people to promote education on social media? And this is really interesting because I think social media, we think often hey, there's a ton of people out there, brand awareness, impressions, but how you market on social media, how you market your education programs is really going to depend on your audience. Is your education content for partners only? Is it for customers only? Is it open to prospects? So depending on what it is, or if you run an employee education program, there's some that might be kind of internal only, sales enablement, product enablement that might just be for your employees, but could you share some of the things externally? So you might want to figure that out of what does that look like? So I'm going to talk about a couple different ways that you could use social media. So this is an example from Partnerships Experience Academy, and they really educate every kind of audience in their platform or in Partnerships Experience Academy. And so they will do a post on their page of all of new courses, new certifications, new content that goes out, because anyone can take this course. So they'll go ahead and they'll post from their company page all about different types of education that they have or new things as they come out. Or it could even be kind of I saw recently, I was kind of tracking as they had milestones of different people, number of certifications awarded or learners in their platform. It was very neat. You can also encourage learners to share, right? So you'll see an example here, and haven't we all done this? You complete a certification, you complete a course somewhere, and then you can go ahead and you can add it to LinkedIn. So you can say some learning management systems have this built in. There's also, if you have maybe like an LMS Lite, or you're using something that's not an LMS right now, there's something called Add to LinkedIn. So if you Google Add to LinkedIn button, there's actually like a little short code that you could do this, where once someone completes learning, you could encourage them to add it to their LinkedIn profile, which is then going to encourage them to share it like this. This is a functionality in the Intellum platform, is just to be able to share it when someone completes a course or a certification. But this is a great way. People love to do this because people just love to share like the things that they earned and learned. But also it's great awareness for your company. So you'll notice like Intellum is tagged in this post. So it's just brand building for your company, and it's brand building for your education programs. And you can also have employees share. So I think that Matthew Pierce from Camtasia does this really well, or TechSmith really, but he'll do kind of like a series. Kyle Jepson, he's one of the professors at HubSpot Academy, and so he has his own personal brand on LinkedIn, and so he'll share tips and tricks and new content that's come out in HubSpot Academy. This is Dan Tyre, he's also on the HubSpot team, but if you have employees who are active online or active in the community in which you sell to or serve, can they share some of the things that your education team is working on? Can we kind of join forces with their personal brand and your education content to share online? I think is another great way to get more exposure for your education program. All right, your website. So typically your website is owned by marketing. You might have a website designer, developer, you might have a communications team, it might be owned by your content team, just kind of depends on how your marketing team is set up. But here are some ways you might consider promoting education to your through your website. And when you're talking to your marketing team, so this is an example from Personio. And so they have Voyager Academy right here in the main navigation. And again, if we go back to that idea of whole product solution selling, it's how do we paint the picture for people of everything that's available to you when you become a customer? And then secondly, how do we help customers to find the things that we've created for them to help them to be successful? So most customers kind of get endlessly frustrated because there's the product and there's your website and there's a community over here and a help site over there and there's a LMS here, and like, where do I go? Where do I go? Right? So if you can add to your navigation a way for them to easily find your education content or your online academy, that makes it just so much easier from the user experience, customer experience perspective to find your education program and content. But then from a prospect perspective, someone who's looking at your company, they can see, oh, they have a community, they have an academy, they have these different resources that could help me to be a successful user of this product. So adding it to the main navigation, that's an example. Something else I'll say about these examples too, it's not just for inspiration for you, but also to show if you are collaborating with your marketing team for something like this, you're probably going to need your marketing team's sign off to show other people what other people are doing, right? So it's not like I'm coming to you with a request out of left field, but this is actually something that many other companies are doing, and here are some examples. And that way we're not reinventing the wheel, we're not trying to do something totally unheard of, we're just trying to do what is maybe best in practice. Highlighting it as a benefit. So this is a little bit different. This is adding it to the navigation. This is kind of highlighting it as a benefit on your website. So this example is from Gusto. They have an academy called Gusto Academy, where people can learn not just about Gusto's product, but also about payroll and billing. They do people advisory, all kinds of like HR payroll type stuff. And so that's all in their academy here. So they're talking about, and a big thing for them is not just being a successful user of the Gusto product, but actually growing your career and growing your practice with Gusto. So that's what their accountant education programs are all about. So they have Gusto Academy here on their website, just to kind of show you what is available to you as a Gusto customer. You can also use a banner like this. So you may have seen banners like this promoting upcoming events or webinars or press releases, partnerships, mergers and acquisitions, right? That banner is kind of like, hey, something happened. And so there are tools often built into your CMS or your website that would allow you to do a banner like this. So you can make the case to your marketing team of, hey, we have this certification and we want to promote it on our website, or we have this upcoming event that we would really love to drive some traffic to. So you might be competing with other things that are going on there, which is totally understandable. But just know that that is often a tool, a resource, an avenue that's available to you. Okay, so we've been talking about how do you market, promote, drive awareness of education in general. Now let's talk about driving returning learners. So people who have already come to your academy, they've already come to some kind of training, they've already engaged with you in some way. We want them to come back, right? Because the best customer is a current customer and the best learner is an already learner. So how do we drive these people back to our education programs? And so same education-led growth research, by the way, coming out next week. So you'll be able to get your hands on all of the data here. But we ask people, how are you driving people back? How are you re-engaging learners? And again, not going to read you the screen here because we're just going to go into those practical examples of each one. Okay, so the first is webinars, and so actually, I should say the first was email campaigns, which we've already talked about email campaigns, and we want to be consistently telling that story and consistently inviting people to stuff. And as much as we can partner with our marketing team, especially if you have lifecycle marketing, customer marketing, digital customer success, scaled customer success, your company might call it different things, but whoever is kind of consistently communicating with customers, we should be in lockstep because what you're creating is so helpful to them. Like they need that content to serve out to customers to help them to be successful users of your product, to adopt your product's features and functionality so they can be successful users, so they can receive the results that they're trying to get from your product. So we want to be partnering with our marketing team on the things that they're already doing and how can we weave education into that. Then the second thing here was webinars and live training. And so this example is from Vizier University. Shout out to Debbie Smith for her team's work on this. And so this is, if you have things like this, having a session at a point in time is really impactful, right? Because again, I mentioned earlier, you have that to read folder, or I'm going to come back to this, or I forget what the stat was. It was something abysmal about how few people finish online courses, right? It's like 12% or less finish online courses, right? So sometimes if it's on demand, there's not a lot of motivation, but if it's a real-time event, there's motivation to maybe commit, to put it on the calendar, to show up, to make time. And so it's a little bit more, creates a little bit more urgency for people to show up. So if you do offer, whether it's new customer onboarding or new hire onboarding, if you do maybe talking about different parts of your product, helping people to adopt specific things, if there's any kind of timely thing that happens in your business, like, hey, it's right, tax, I'm thinking about tax season is now, a month from now, taxes are due if you have a product and like that's a time frame for your customer, then you might have a webinar around that, right? Or you might have instructor-led training of some sort. So that can be a great way to get people and give you something like a reason to show up in their inbox or a reason to use an in-app message. Reminder emails, I am going to acknowledge it's a very plain looking email, right? So this is kind of like a do what you want with it, but it exists. But most learning management systems, Intellum included, will allow you to send a reminder email. So if someone started a course and they didn't finish it, you like, instead of trying to remind thousands, tens of thousands of people like, hey, pick up where you left off, your platform can do that for you, right? It can say, hey, like, don't forget, or like, you left off here, do you want to continue learning? And it's just some way to nudge learners to come back and to continue learning. So reminder emails are incredible, and those are just automated, running in the background. You don't have to think about it once you turn them on. I say that you should audit your reminder emails the same way that you would audit your content, but it runs for you. So you don't have to like point in time, say like on this day at this time to this audience, we're sending something. Okay, gamification. This is a great way to engage learners in general, but especially to keep them coming back. This example is from HMD and Nokia, right? So just an example of how they're using gamification. Gamification is a whole strategy, right? And it can mean all kinds of different things. It's not just points. It's not just leaderboards or challenges or competitions. It can be any number of things. It can be a combination of things. But it can be a great way to encourage people to come back, right? Because if they're accruing points for content that they consume or events that they attend, if there's a leaderboard, if there's a challenge, that can be incentive and motivation. And so especially when we think about different types of people, different types of learners that we're engaging with, what is it that motivates them? Some of them are motivated by like being on a leaderboard or a challenge or a competition. So gamification can be a great way to encourage people to come back and keep learning. Personalized learning paths, right? So if we think about kind of the future of learning, we know that personalized learning paths, we all want something that feels custom made for us. We don't want to sift through things to figure out, okay, like this is too beginner for me or this is too advanced for me, but can I actually create something custom? So we offer personalized learning plans in the Intellum platform, but that can be a way to kind of engage people with personalized content, personalized recommendations based on where they're at in their learning journey. If you have a community, right, your community may be in your LMS, it may be in a different place, right? It just depends on your company and your tech stack. But you can link to education from the community. So this is from Alteryx, and they link to learning from their community. So again, if you think about where are people already, where are our customers already, and then how do we meet them where they're at? So if they're in the product, maybe they're going to our website because that's where they go to find things about our company. Maybe they're engaged in our community. Can we just open a door for them to come and learn or come back and learn? You can also combine education and community, and this is like a recurring trend. So we did a webinar a couple months ago with Andrew DeBell from Atlassian talking about social learning at Atlassian, and their community and education teams sit together. And I think that's increasingly common because education and community really go hand in hand. Education is inherently social, right? We're social learners by nature. We want to ask questions and engage with people or tell me more about that. So communities can be a great way, right? Education can point to community, but then community can point to education. And we can kind of go back and forth, right? So this is a Trailblazer in Salesforce Trailhead, a thread, and then they've got related learning in the sidebar. So that's great, like especially if your community platform can serve up related or recommended learning based on the topic that people are engaging with. Incredible way just to keep your education top of mind and get people to continue learning. All right. So I want to talk about so those are all like really practical examples. Because often what I hear from people is like, what does that look like? Or can you show me an example of that? Or I don't really know what to post. So those are examples and you can use those as templates. And again, like ChatGPT can be a good friend for you. You could program it to help you write social posts or write emails or things like that if you don't have marketing resources. But I do want to talk about collaborating with your marketing team because I think your marketing team should be a great partner for your education program. They should want to partner with you. And so a few things on this. The first thing that I'm going to say is that when we're partnering with our marketing team, we don't want to tell them exactly what to do, right? So in the same way that we don't want someone to tell us what kind of course we should build, how we should build it, like we want to be like, I'm not going to say this word right, consultative, like in our approach. So your marketing team knows how to do marketing. That's why they work in marketing. But these are some things to keep in mind, really to have that partnership where we're not saying like, here's exactly what you've got to do, but we're really saying, hey, like I would love to work with you. I think that if we collaborated, this would be so helpful for our customers, for our partners, and I would love to work with you. But I also I want to take some of the work off of your plate, right? Because your marketing team has some inputs that would be helpful for them to understand what should we do, how should we do it, where should we do it, when should we do it, right? So these are some inputs that you could give to your marketing team. We all want the right person to get the right content at the right time, right? So if we go back to that idea of personalized learning, it's not just the content itself, but it's like, are we meeting people where they're at? Do we know who you are? Are we serving up the right message and the right content at the right time? So that's your goal, but that's also your marketing team's goal. They want to make sure that someone who is in their first 90 days with your product doesn't get stuff that probably for more advanced customers or power users of your platform. So some ways we can be helpful, some information we can tee up for our marketing team is audience segmentation. So who is this content right for? Are there certain user roles or permissions in the platform that these people would have? Is this prospects, customers, partners, or is this a certain segment of those, right? So if we have self-serve customers, enterprise customers, different types of customers, customers with access to different product modules, we want to make sure that they know, like, hey, this is who this is for, right? And so if we think about who did we create this learning for, we can serve that up to our marketing team to help them. Life cycle timing. So when is the right time to get this email? Is this something that would be helpful earlier in your customer journey? Is this something that is helpful in kind of the adoption stage of your journey? Is this something that might introduce you to new product functionality that you don't have today that maybe could lead to expansion? So we want to just help them understand when and at what point in the customer's life cycle would this content be most relevant. That way we're not serving people things that are too like basic for where they're at or too advanced for where they're at. We want to think about learning or product dependencies. So when does it make the most sense to engage with this content? So if I have not already done A in the product and A is a prerequisite to B, probably going to be like not the best thing for me to say like, hey, go do this thing, because actually I need to do this thing first. So do they need to take another course before the content that you're serving up makes sense? Do they need to have or already use certain parts of the product in order for this content to make sense? So those are some things that you could provide as input to your marketing team. And then of course we have like the goal of the content. What should the learner do? If we think about our learning objectives, what kind of behavior change are we trying to drive? We want to be able to share that with our marketing team so we can say at the end of this course or at the end of this certification, the end of this video, we want people to be able to do X. And then all of that is good input for your marketing team to be able to say, ooh, that might actually really work in that nurture over here, or ooh, in email 2 of this onboarding sequence, or, maybe in the kickoff, we could mention that, that we have this new customer onboarding series, right? So we're giving them these inputs so they can start to think about the things that they already have in flight, communications that are already going out, life cycle nurtures that they have, and then where does this content fit in, if that makes sense. Okay, we are getting close to the end. Again, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat here. But the last thing I want to talk about, so we've talked about how do you market and promote your program? How do you drive returning learners? How do you collaborate with your marketing team? What could that look like? But then also, there could be a lot of options, right? There are a lot of options. So how do you prioritize what to do? And this is where, when I think about data and metrics, I usually just think about questions. Data and metrics can be a little overwhelming. But if I'm thinking about what are the questions I'm trying to answer, then I can think about what metrics relate to those. So these are some questions that I might ask myself to understand what would make the biggest impact. Would it be more impactful to drive new learners to learning? Would it be more impactful to drive returning learners? So I might ask how many people are coming to my academy? How many people are creating an account, right? So that could be like how many people are coming and then how many people are actually signing up, creating an account, starting learning. What percentage of my customers have an account in my LMS or are engaged in some kind of training, right? So again, education-led growth research will kind of talk about like what percentage of your customer base is engaged in some kind of education. And so if 10% of your customer base is engaged in education, there's probably a significant opportunity. You're probably not going to get to 100%, but could you get to 20? And what kind of impact would that make on your business? If the 10% of customers who are already engaging with your education program are seeing results from that, and your business is seeing results from that, whether that's higher product adoption, retention, expansion, just any kind of growth, if you can see that with that 10%, what a difference it can make to have 20% of your customers educated and trained. We might ask ourselves, how many people are coming back to continue learning? So do people come in, they do one thing and they never come back? Can we get people to come back? We're probably not going to get everybody to come back multiple times, right? Our goal is never really 100% of anything. It's just, can we move the needle a little bit? If 50% of people come back, would 55% make a difference? 60? Like, what would that look like for our business? What would that mean in terms of impact? How frequently are learners returning? And again, this might depend. So DAU, WAU, MAU stands for daily, weekly, or monthly active users. So again, depending on your product, it may be reasonable that people on a regular basis are coming into your academy, but it might not be reasonable, right? Depending on how people use a product. If I'm only in a product once a month, I'm probably not engaged in an education program weekly, right? It just would make sense with how the product gets used. But we can look at how frequently are people returning. Does this kind of match where we want them to be? Is there an opportunity to move the needle there? How much content is the average learner consuming? So we might look at, are people engaging with 2 things, 3 things, 4 things, 5 things? Does the number of things that they engage with impact any kind of business metrics? Is it that the more, right, that if we see people have done 5 or more trainings, that they're more likely to retain? Okay, well, maybe that's a number we want to strive for. If the average learner is only consuming 3 trainings, can we get them to 5? What would it look like, or what would it take to get us to 5 trainings per person? And then what would have the biggest impact on the business? So again, like thinking about all these questions and then saying, okay, which needle, which lever could we pull that would have more of an impact? Because you could drive a lot of new learners to your platform, and that might actually really make an impact. Is just to be engaged and involved in some kind of education might have a huge impact on retention or on product adoption. But you might find that driving returning learners is actually going to be more impactful, because as people consume more content, they're using more of your product. So their usage rate is going up. So their account with you is like increasing in size, right? So it all just depends on your business. And that's where I think sometimes it's hard to give like a hard and fast, this is exactly what you should do, when and where you should do it. But it's more asking yourself these questions based on where we're at today, what makes the most sense? Okay, that's the questions. My final slide here, again, it's in the slide deck underneath this video. I just linked to some more resources. So these are some other things. We've hosted another webinar on building strong cross-functional relationships. So if you're struggling to get your internal teams to market and promote your education programs, I would highly recommend watching that. And then there's just a couple articles there with more examples of how you can market and promote. So my goal here is really just for you to have like all of this so you can take it and run with it. Because if you are marketing your own education program, you are definitely not alone, and you don't have to be an expert marketer to do it. But hopefully these resources, this webinar today has given you some ideas and inspiration of what you can do, and then also how you can partner with other people in your company to market and promote your education program. Okay, there's a couple questions that have come in, so I'm gonna end the slides here and then answer the questions. Okay, so Scarlett is asking, what are some ways to use social media and the website to promote Academy that's only available to premium partners? Our tool has a freemium model, and the Academy is a good way to upsell our premium product, but we're also a nonprofit, want to be mindful of users who use the free tools. Yeah, so Scarlett, I'm wondering if you have, sometimes you can do this, right? So like I work with SEDMA, which is a nonprofit association. And so we have members only webinars, and we will promote those on social media. One, because our members follow us on social media, but 2, because it's a good incentive to become a member. So we will tell people there, and we'll say, hey, like next week we have a members only webinar on blank. So I wonder if you could do something like that. Like this is available to our premium partners, where it's not disrespectful to people who are free users of your product, but it's just a benefit, an advantage that people who are premium partners have. And then I'm also wondering if there's perhaps a place where your premium partners are that your free users are not, right? So do they have a portal? Do they have a part of your product? Could you use those in-app tools to kind of segment specifically to that audience? And then kind of target them there? Or are there pages of your website that are more for premium partners? But again, I would kind of go back to, I'm going to pull up the example from Personio on their website of some of this might just be depending on, right? Like not everybody's going to have access to everything. Because it might just depend on the level of user role that you have or what type of partner you are. And so usually you'll just see like, I'll even see sometimes an academy and a navigation, but then you have to log in and be a customer, right? So it doesn't mean that I can't say like that we have this education. It might just be that it's restricted to certain users, and I think people understand that. All right, Helena's saying, are there any industry metrics in general of what percentage of customers are typically engaged with a company's LMS? Okay, that's going to come out. I would pull up this report. Actually, let me just do that for you. So I'm going to find that for you, Helene. This will come out in the research report next week. But I have to do a little control find. Okay. So, what percentage of your educated audience completes at least one educational program or training per year? So, probably the largest kind of part of the bar graph here is between 21 to 40%. So, 24% of people responded that 21 to 40% of their customers engage with one like format of education per year. 12% said 41 to 60, 8% said 61 to 80, and then 11% said 81 to 100. So that'd be like pretty significant to have 81 to 100% of your customers engage with some type of learning. So I will say that's not necessarily LMS only. That could also be training. If you're doing virtual instructor-led training or on-site trainings that don't take place in your LMS, they might register for it through your LMS, but it would be inclusive of different types of education content where they're offered. All right, any other questions? We have a few minutes here before we wrap up. I appreciate you all jumping on today and learning with me. So this is your chance to ask all things marketing. And if you don't have questions right now, you can always find me on LinkedIn. You can join an upcoming webinar. Again, underneath this video, you'll find an area where you can rate this session. So you can tell me how I did. You can tell me if there are other things that you want to learn about, other webinar topics that would be beneficial for you, things that are top of mind for you as you're running your education programs this year. Under there, you'll also find a copy of the slide deck from today. You'll find next month we're going to host a summit. So it'll be a series of events on AI in education. So if that's top of mind for you, I think AI is top of mind for a lot of people, then you'll find that underneath this video as well. Clea. Clea said, "Why are you so awesome?" I think that it was in the eye of the beholder, Clea. Jose, any LinkedIn specific tips? Yeah, so Jose, I would go back to these. I'm going to find the slides here. Oh, it's before website. Yeah, so one would be use your company's page. So this might be in collaboration with your social media manager, is to talk about the education that you're offering. And again, like I think one of the things, the talk track that I would have in mind is that whole product solution is people are no longer like, you line up free products and they're largely going to look the same. The biggest difference might be how you're getting supported on the tail end. And so education is a huge differentiator for companies. If you have resources that can help people to learn your product, learn your service, learn more about your industry, become better at your job, grow in your career, that's a huge differentiator, right? So getting them to share things, and again, whether or not they have to be a customer or not, right? Not everything that we post on social media has to be for everybody. It could be, hey, like as a customer, you're going to have access to this. And then encouraging learners to share. Again, your LMS is probably going to have something like this. Is some way like a post to LinkedIn type feature. And then having employees share. So if you have employees who have a brand in the space, giving them copy. So we have a channel internally called Making It Awesome. And we'll be like, hey, come make this thing awesome. And we will give people images and copy and content to then go share on their social media channels. And then we'll kind of recognize and reward people for engaging with our content on social. So you could do that for your education program as well here. I know HubSpot Academy is really incredible about that. A lot of their professors and people internally have these brands on LinkedIn, and they're sharing HubSpot Academy's content pretty frequently. Okay. Awesome. Okay, Michelle said we do most of these things already, so it's nice to feel validated. Look, like half the time, I'm just here to tell you that y'all are doing a great job, and you know a lot more than you think you do, and we're all in this together. So totally here for you, Michelle. And then hello, Sid, Erica, Scarlett, Abigail, April. Awesome. Looking forward to seeing some of you next week in Austin. All right, if there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give you some time back and wrap us up. But thank you all again. Oop, Laura coming in. Okay, how might the marketing strategy change if your education program is for product users who are not the actual customers? Okay, can you help me understand that? Laura, are you thinking like a difference between the person who like buys the product, sells or signs the contract, and then the person who actually uses the product? Is that what you're thinking? Okay. I'm going to wait for Laura to respond. But I would say just on the marketing strategy in general, keep in mind in marketing, we have this concept called buyer personas. They're the people who buy from us. Like, who are they? What do they think? What matters to them? What keeps them up at night? What are their pain points? What are their hopes, dreams, goals, wishes? You probably have a lot of that for your learners too. So you already have a ton of information on your learners, why they learn, when they learn, what they want to learn, what would be useful to them. And so use that to inform, right? I think a huge thing, this will just be like Shannon's personal tangent on marketing strategy. The biggest thing missing from most marketing strategies is an understanding of who's on the other end of your marketing. And I think as an educator, you have probably the deepest understanding of these people because you're spending time training them. Maybe you're in live training with them. You're in community with them. They're responding to your on-demand content. They're in the chat on the webinar, right? So you're hearing from these people all the time. So you probably have a really deep understanding of them, which is going to make it so much easier for you to really ask yourself, where are they? Like, where are they today? Where might they be engaging with us? What would be helpful to them? What is it that they need to hear? And a lot of that will inform your messaging and then also which channels you use. Okay, so going back to Laura's question, product users who are not actual customers. So this will depend. So this is where I would go back to when you're partnering with your marketing team, and I'm going to find the slide. Okay. Of when you're sharing with your marketing team, the audience segmentation, right? So we have people who are like, their main role in Salesforce is they're a contract signer, right? We might have people who are billing contacts, people who are signing a contract, people who kind of own the relationship with Intellum. And then we have people who are admins in our product. And those are the people who may not necessarily like be in Salesforce or have even been involved in buying Intellum, but they're the people who are using it every day. So if you have an in-app tool, you'll be able to target those users of your product. If you're often, I will say this, I think often product admins don't necessarily sync to your email marketing or marketing automation platform. They may not sync to your CRM like Salesforce. So you might work with your product team to get a list of those people. So I've worked on that a number of times for companies, is just getting product users, like actual admins, users out of the platform and into a tool where we could actually communicate with those people. So probably the easiest way to do it for most people is going to be in-app messaging because they're in your product, they're using your product. So you're meeting them where they're at. But if you can extract their emails somehow and get them into your marketing automation platform, then you could actually start to send communications to them of things that might be more relevant to them versus to maybe the buyer of your product. Yeah, this is a great question. Yeah, thinking about just always like, who is the right person? Like, how do we make sure we're targeting the right person? So we're not marketing, promoting something that really makes no sense, right? For the person who's on the receiving end. And sometimes that is thinking about those user roles. What kind of permissions do people have in the product? And then how do we segment accordingly? But if you're in a position where your product users live in your product and nowhere else, I would also say you're not alone in that. And that's definitely a project. I think it's a worthy endeavor, but definitely a project for a lot of companies. You're welcome, Laura. Awesome possum. Okay, cool. Well, thank you all for showing up today. I had a great time. I hope you did too. Again, go ahead right underneath this and join us next month for the AI Summit. I'm really excited about that. You'll hear from some great voices, just some really cool things of like actually today, not aspirationally, where are we going, but like where are we actually at today. So we'll talk about that next month and I will see you then. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.